Hello, I'm Faberistry and today I'm going to be recreating and transforming the Origin SMP. So without any further ado, don't forget to like that smash button as well as subscribing, and let's begin. However, because no seed is released for the Origin SMP, I just had to find a very similar one. And with having a roughly similar seed, the world should look roughly the same as well. And to begin with, I constructed the pub on the Origin SMP. The way I recreated the pub on the Origin SMP, along with the rest of the builds on the Origin SMP, was that I watched various live streams, and then from the views of which they looked at the builds, I could then copy them. Just like you can see here as I've reconstructed the pub on the Origin SMP. Then after that, I reconstructed Slimeskull's base. Next to reconstruct was Phil's birdcage. And the next thing left to reconstruct is the Origin SMP prison. After creating the prison, it's time to recreate Fundy's foxhole. And next up is Scott's greenhouse. Now this was a bit more difficult because I had to add a bit more terrain for it to fit in. But here is the recreation of the greenhouse. Next up was to recreate Tubbo and Rambu's arrow shop. And now for the final recreation of this video. The recreation of Tubbo and Rambu's cave base. And with that, the recreation is complete. And something to bear in mind is that everything that has been created is all up to date as of recording. So if anything additional has been added, I will not have it in this transformation. And now it's time to begin with the transformation. I started off by transforming Slimeskull's base. To begin with, I removed his current structure that was his base and replaced it with a lime and green platform. Next, using a mixture of slime, lime wool, lime concrete powder, I filled in this area within the platform, and I tried to make it look as sporadic as possible. Next, I wanted to have a few slimes above this platform, so I made 3 above this platform. Next, by using that same combination of slime, lime concrete powder and lime wool, I created a pillar going up into the sky and connecting to all the other slimes. I even had some slime blocks going inside the slimes to make it look like it was even more connected. And with that, Slimeskull's Origin SMP base is complete. The next base to transform is Wilbur Soot's haunted house. Now before, this base was very small, so I needed to scale it up a lot. So once I had scaled it up, I also tried to make it look a lot more haunted. For example, I added things such as boarded up windows and holes inside the windows. I also added in a few leaves to make it look like it's been abandoned for a long time, and some plants have started growing on the insides. I also added a few cobwebs here and there. Also, I made some holes in the roofs, and in the loft area I had a lot of barrels to represent some storage, but I made sure that they were quite sporadic and random. Additionally, to add some more spookiness to Wilbur's house, I added a few bridges connecting from the house to the main island. However, I destroyed parts of these bridges to make them look as if they've been abandoned and ruined. The next building to transform in the Origin SMP is Tubbo and Rambu's arrow shop. The first step I did was to destroy the castle, because I'm not quite sure why they have a castle as a shop, and I made it into a much more usable store design. And I added more decorations, for example some TNT out front and some skull and crossbone banners along the sides. After the shop, I then transformed Fundy's foxhole. The only thing it really needed was for it to be on a much larger scale, as well as some greenery using leaves and vines to brighten it up a bit. After that, I added some neater pathways leading from Fundy's foxhole over to the shop. Then I added a bridge connecting the two sides from the lake. And the next place to transform is Phil's birdcage. I wanted this one to be a little bit more unique, so I created a flying parrot carrying its birdcage. So now that Phil's base is complete, the base nearest to it is Scott's greenhouse, so I'm going to transform that next. Just like many of the others, it's quite a good build, it just needs a little bit more expansion, and a proper interior. So that's exactly what I did. I started out by making it 3 times as big, and one of the final places to transform is Tubbo and Rambo's underground house. The first room didn't need a lot done, it just needed a bit of neatening up, like removing some torches and adding some lanterns, as well as neatening up the ceiling. However, in the centre room, I wanted to expand it a bit to allow more space for the massive tree that I'm going to be adding. But before I can add this tree, I also want to make sure that everything is neatened up first, which just means having much nicer and neater walls that match the first room. And now that that room is all nice and neat, I added that massive tree, along with a lot of beehives and bee-related blocks along the sides of the walls for more bees to go. I also added a lot of flowers, as that way the bees can pollinate them. Then, through to the next room is where a trading hall is. However, the day after I finished my recreation, Rambo built his trading hall. So, using some of the designs he made, I'm going to improve on it to create this trading hall. I also added an iron golem statue at the end of the trading hall. Then for the roof of the trading hall, I had leaves coming down into the room to just add more colour, as well as to add a bit more dimensions, because it did look like a very repeating pattern. And there's one build left that needs to be transformed before I transform the Origin SMP pub, and that would be the prison. I also made sure that there were 2 cells in my prison, just like the original one had. And now, finally, the biggest build on the Origin SMP server, the pub. The first thing I did was to destroy the original pub. Then above it I created a large circle, and then on top of this circle I created the outlines. Next up I created a large lake for Nikki to go in, because before she was just in a 2x3 fish tank. Inside this lake I tried to add as much detail. For example, I added some corals, as well as turtles, turtle eggs, dolphins and tropical fish. Next I created an area for Jack Manifold and his nether part of the pub. Next I added the floors into the Origin SMP pub. I used barrels, but as you got closer to the water area I mixed in some trapdoors, and as you get closer to the nether area I added some nether bricks. Then I built up the walls and roof. I tried to keep them to the original design palette, but I did change it up a bit. I also made sure that Jack's nether area had a different wall and roof to it. Next to do was the interior. In the interior I wanted to add a bit more colour, so near each of the windows I placed some bamboo. I also created some ledges where I can have leaves hanging down, as well as a few flower plots with flowers inside them. And for even more colour I added an area for some flowers and then put glass over them, so you can walk over the flowers. I also added a second lookout layer above. Next I went back onto the exterior, and the land around it I just neatened it up so that it wasn't so flat. I also bone mealed the grass so that there's more depth and variation. I also added a small tree next to the lake. And one of the final steps in the Origin SMP transformation is to add the bottom part of the island to the floating pub. But unlike the original floating pub, I wanted to make sure that this one had a lot more detail, rather than just stone. And with that, the Origin SMP transformation is complete. Here's a quick tour of the world. So that's all for this video on recreating and transforming the Origin SMP. Also, please consider subscribing to get notified as soon as I upload a new video. Also, why not like that smash button? And if you want to watch another video of mine, click the video on the left. Or if you want to watch me transforming the Dream SMP, click the video on the right. Thank you for watching, and goodbye!